If you grew up in the 80s, you already know these cartoons left scars that never really healed. Decades before parental warning labels and helicopter parenting, Saturday mornings were an unfiltered parade of graphic rabbit carnage, occult villains, and toy-fueled nightmares, all thanks to a single FCC decision in 1984 that flipped children's TV standards upside down. Millions of kids tuned in expecting colorful adventures, but what they got still keeps them up at night. Are you ready to revisit the 10 most traumatizing cartoons your childhood tried to suppress? And ask yourself, would any of these even be allowed today? Watership Down arrived on American television with all the subtlety of a sledgehammer, disguised in local TV listings as a gentle cartoon about rabbits. Parents saw a British U rating and assumed it was safe family fare. What they got was something else entirely. Afternoon reruns in the early 1980s dropped kids straight into a world where survival meant teeth, claws, and blood, animated with a realism that left no room for fairy tales. Fiver's vision of doom still lingers in memory. Wide-eyed rabbits, fields stained red, and a sense of dread that crept in before the first commercial break. Station programmers, desperate to fill weekend blocks, often grabbed whatever foreign animation was available. Watership Down, with its hand-drawn fields and watercolor skies, seemed harmless enough. But the film's violence was never softened for its American audience. Scenes of rabbits attacking, wounds tearing open, and the haunting threat of death played out in full. There were no edits, no warning, just the raw, unfiltered struggle for survival. Within days, affiliate offices were flooded with complaint letters. Parents wrote about children too scared to sleep, and local station managers scrambled to explain how a story about talking animals turned into a lesson in mortality. Archived memos from several affiliates reveal a pattern: regret, apologies, and promises to pull future airings from kid-friendly slots. The shock wasn't just in the violence, it was in the realization that afternoon cartoons were no longer a safe zone. For many kids, Watership Down was their first brush with animated death, the first time a cartoon didn't flinch from showing suffering. The scars left by Hazel's wounding or Bigwig's desperate fight in the snare ran deeper than any playground scrape. Would a network dare air something this raw today? Under current children's TV rules, those scenes would be edited, if not banned outright. But in the 80s, all it took was a programming slot and a misplaced rating. The lesson was clear. In the world of Saturday afternoon cartoons, even the cutest creatures could turn into nightmare fuel. And no one, not even a rabbit, was safe. While Watership Down delivered violence straight out of a horror film, the next wave of cartoon chills came wrapped in blue skin and catchy theme songs. The Smurfs, debuting on NBC in 1981, looked innocent enough. Tiny creatures living in mushroom houses, singing as they worked. But behind the cheery facade lurked Gargamel, a villain obsessed with capturing, cooking, and, on more than one occasion, eating Smurfs. His lair was packed with bubbling potions, pentagrams, and spellbooks, laying out a weekly menu of dark magic for unsuspecting viewers. For parents, already on edge over the so-called satanic panic, this was gasoline on the fire. By 1983, complaint letters flooded NBC's offices, not just from worried moms, but from national groups like the National Federation for Decency. Their newsletters named the Smurfs as a cartoon gateway to the occult, citing episodes where Gargamel summoned demons or transformed himself through ritual. TV guide logs from 1983 to 1985 show a pattern. Potion-heavy scenes quietly edited, and NBC's standards team scrambling to keep the magic light. Yet for kids glued to the screen, the threat always felt real. Every time Gargamel cackled over his cauldron, another wave of unease swept through living rooms across America. Meanwhile, reruns of Scooby-Doo kept the anxiety luring long after the credits rolled. The show's formula, an abandoned amusement park, a howling wind, and a monster lurking in the shadows, never got old or any less scary. Younger viewers clutched couch cushions as ghosts burst through windows or suits of armor sprang to life. NBC's Fupamu's own programming files from the early 80s record a spike in ratings whenever an episode promised extra spookiness. Parents wrote in begging for less scary monsters, but the numbers told a different story. The scarier the episode, the bigger the audience. Network censors tried to soften the blows with shadowy lighting and that unmistakable Scooby-Doo chase music, but the jump scares still hit hard. For a generation raised on the promise that cartoons were safe, the combination of Gargamel's black magic and Scooby's parade of ghouls proved otherwise. Suddenly, Saturday mornings weren't just about cereal and laughter. They were about serving whatever the TV threw at you next. In 1985, a new kind of cartoon villain stalked Saturday mornings. Mumm-Ra, the ancient sorcerer of Thundercats, didn't just haunt the corners of Third Earth. He invaded living rooms with a transformation sequence that felt ripped straight from a midnight horror movie. Children expecting the usual masked baddie instead watched a decaying mummy wrapped in tattered bandages begin to chant in a guttural, echoing voice. The air would shimmer, his eyes would glow, and then the real terror began. Flesh stretched, bones cracked, and Mumm-Ra's shriveled form exploded into a towering, muscle-bound demon draped in ancient Egyptian regalia. Lightning flashed, red mist swirled, and for a few seconds, the screen belonged to nightmares. The show's creators at Rankin and Bass weren't shy about their influences. Interviews from Animation magazine in 1986 reveal that Ted Wolfe, the show's creator, wanted Mumm-Ra to channel classic horror icons: Boris Karloff's Mummy, Lon Chaney's Phantom, even a touch of Nosferatu. The Egyptian motif wasn't just for style. It was meant to evoke ancient curses and forbidden magic. Animator notes from the original production sheets called for transformation effects that walk the edge between scary and heroic. For many kids, that edge was crossed the moment Mumm-Ra's bandages snapped away and his voice dropped an octave. Network censors took notice. According to staff interviews and test screening memos, early episodes of Thundercats prompted requests for toned-down visuals. Some stations asked for quicker cuts, less lingering on the transformation, or even a reduction in the glowing red eyes. But the animators pushed back, insisting the sequence was the heart of the villain's menace. The result was a compromise. The transformation stayed, but the camera lingered just a beat less than the original storyboards intended. Still, the impact was unforgettable. Kids would freeze mid-bite, cereal spoons suspended, as Mumm-Ra's roar rattled the speakers. Unlike the cartoon witches and bumbling henchmen of earlier shows, Mumm-Ra felt dangerous. He didn't want to steal treasure or play tricks. He wanted to destroy the Thundercats, and he had the supernatural muscle to do it. The transformation sequence became a ritual. Every time Lion-O and his friends gained the upper hand, the chant would begin, and dread would settle in all over again. Parents wrote letters, some praising the artistry, others questioning whether such horror belonged on daytime TV. But for the kids of the 80s, Mumm-Ra's metamorphosis became a badge of honor, a test of nerves, a story to trade on the playground. Today, it's hard to imagine a children's cartoon getting away with that level of body horror. Under current network guidelines, the sequence would likely be edited, softened, or cut entirely. But in 1985, the line between heroics and horror was thin, and Thundercats leapt right over it. The memory of Mumm-Ra's transformation lingers, proof that sometimes the scariest villains aren't the ones hiding in the shadows, but the ones who step into the light and change before your eyes. Optimus Prime's death didn't just rattle a few kids. It sent shockwaves through playgrounds, living rooms, and the offices of Hasbro itself. In the summer of 1986, Transformers the movie hit theaters with a mission straight from the boardroom. Out with the old, in with the new. Internal Hasbro memos, later cited in the LA Times, laid it out bluntly. Remove the legacy characters to make room for fresh toys. Nobody warned the audience what was coming. One moment, Optimus was the fearless leader. The next, his colors faded to gray, and the world seemed to stop. For a generation, raised on the promise that heroes always win, watching Optimus die on screen felt like a betrayal. The aftermath wasn't subtle. Parents sent complaint letters by the hundreds, some reprinted in newspapers, describing children who refused to eat, sleep, or even play with their new Autobot figures. Psychologists weighed in on talk shows, warning that the emotional gut punch might be too much for young viewers. Sunbow and Hasbro scrambled to undo the damage, eventually resurrecting Optimus in later episodes, proof that for once, the fans held more power than the marketers. According to TV Guide listings, reruns of the movie were quietly edited for years to soften the blow, but the memory stuck. While the death of Optimus played out as a single, unforgettable trauma, another kind of fear crept in week after week, courtesy of He-Man's archenemy. Skeletor, with his grinning skull and shrill, mocking voice, ruled over Snake Mountain and the nightmares of millions. Unlike the one-time shock of losing a hero, Skeletor's menace was a slow drip, his cackle echoing through the halls of every after-school routine. The animation, heavy on shadows and eerie lighting, didn't help. Filmation's budget tricks, recycled backgrounds, lingering close-ups, only made his appearances more unsettling. Each episode, he'd loom over the screen, plotting world domination or the destruction of He-Man. Never quite defeated, always returning with a new plan. The toy aisles reflected this arms race. Mattel's marketing team, locked in battle with Hasbro, pushed for ever darker designs and bigger playsets. Snake Mountain, with its purple jaws and echoing microphone, became a must-have for kids eager to reenact Skeletor's latest scheme. But the real prize was the villain's presence itself, a reminder that, in the 80s, the line between fun and fear was razor thin. Rumors about Skeletor's origins spread from lunchroom to lunchroom. Some insisted he was based on a real skull found in a desert. Others claimed his laugh could shatter glass. None of it was true, but the stories grew with every retelling. By 1984, even psychologists were warning in parenting magazines that the combination of Skeletor's design and the show's relentless tone might be too intense for sensitive viewers. Yet the ratings soared, and so did the sales. Unlike the clean break of a cinematic death, Skeletor's shadow lingered. He didn't just haunt the screen, he haunted the weak. For every kid who lost sleep over Optimus Prime, there were dozens more who spent Saturday mornings glancing nervously at the door, half expecting to hear that cackling voice. If you survived both, you earned your 80s stripes. Like and subscribe if Skeletor gave you nightmares too. By 1986, the daytime cartoon lineup had taken a turn that even horror movie fans might call extreme. Inhumanoids, produced by Hasbro and Marvel, arrived with monsters that looked less like toys and more like escapees from a midnight creature feature. Decompose, with his exposed ribs and skull face, didn't just threaten the heroes, he transformed people into zombies with a single touch, locking victims inside his own ribcage. Storyboards from Marvel's animation team called for gut-ripping close-ups, and the finished episodes delivered: melting flesh, writhing tentacles, and creatures bursting out of the ground. The show's body horror was so intense that, according to local interviews and retro TV blogs, stations in cities like Seattle yanked it from their schedules after just a few airings, swapping in safer fare to calm angry parents. Even Hasbro's Zone executives started to worry. Internal memos from 1986 reveal concerns that the series might be too dark to support the toy line. But the forbidden label only fueled its legend. Playground rumors swirled about banned episodes and monsters that could melt your face off before the next commercial break. In syndication, some episodes were trimmed or delayed, but the damage was done. For a generation of kids, Inhumanoids was the show you watched through your fingers, daring each other to make it to the end credits. Just a year later, G.I. Joe. The movie pushed the envelope even further. The introduction of Cobra-La brought a wave of body mutations and organic machinery. Villains sprouted tentacles, weapons fused with flesh, and Serpentor's transformation scene felt like something out of a David Cronenberg film. Storyboards show animators instructed to maximize the squirm factor, and the results were unforgettable. Some TV affiliates refused to air the movie in its original slot, and rumors about foreign broadcasters declining to dub these scenes only added to the mystique. Kids swapped stories about the forbidden footage, wondering if anyone else had nightmares about Cobra-La's writhing monsters. In the late 80s, the rules of daytime TV had changed. Monsters didn't just chase heroes. They broke them down, mutated them, and sometimes swallowed them whole. If you survived Decompose's touch or Serpentor's transformation, you earned more than a badge. You earned the right to call yourself an 80s kid. Rainbow Bright was supposed to be a safe haven, a pastel world where the biggest threat was running out of color. Then came The Dark Princess in 1985. A villain so chilling, she seemed to have wandered in from a horror movie. Her entrance wasn't just dramatic, it was unsettling. Eyes that glowed, a voice that dripped with malice, and a plan to drain Rainbow Land of every last drop of light. For children expecting giggles and rainbows, her arrival was like a cold wind through the toy aisle. Letters poured in from parents, worried that the special's villain was more nightmare than nemesis. Dicey, Entertainment's own notes reveal that even the writers questioned if they'd gone too far, but the toy division wanted a villain who could stand out on the shelf and in memory. Daytime TV didn't let up. The Real Ghostbusters, debuting in 1986, brought horror straight into the after-school lineup. While most episodes balanced scares with slapstick, some, like The Boogeyman Cometh, crossed a line. The boogeyman's twisted face and echoing voice haunted a generation, sending kids diving behind couches before dinner. ABC's standards and practices files are filled with pleas from parents, asking for less hellish content. But the show's creators, led by J. Michael Straczynski, pushed the envelope, packing in demons, possessions, and Lovecraftian monsters that would never make it past today's censors. In many homes, Ghostbusters became a test of bravery. Could you make it through an episode without covering your eyes? Modern networks wouldn't even try. Under 2024 FCC and network guidelines, explicit horror and violence are strictly banned in children's programming. Today's cartoons keep death off screen, villains goofy, and scares reversible. Even streaming platforms like Netflix sanitize their reboots, trading menace for irony and safe jokes. According to a 2023 YouGov poll, 87% of Americans aged 40 to 54 say they often reminisce about the cartoons that shaped and sometimes scarred their childhoods. Would The Dark Princess or The Boogeyman air today? Not a chance. But for those who survived them, the memory is a badge of honor. Like and subscribe if you made it through the Boogeyman's episode without hiding. Only 80s kids know what it means to face real cartoon terror and live to tell the tale. In 1984, an FCC policy change doubled the allowed ad minutes during kids' TV, opening the door to cartoons like Thundercats and Transformers, the movie, where Optimus Prime's on-screen death in 1986 drew documented complaints and left a lasting mark on childhoods. Across the decade, network memos, TV guide listings, and parent group archives all reveal a clear pattern. Toy company influence and looser rules led to darker stories, graphic violence, and villains like Mumm-Ra and the Dark Princess appearing in the middle of Saturday mornings. While broadcast standards have tightened since, Records show that episodes of Inhumanoids and G.I. Joe's Cobra Law arc sparked affiliate bans and age warnings even before the 1990s. Yet, some questions remain, like how many unaired scripts or censored scenes still sit in network vaults, their content unconfirmed. What's certain is that these cartoons weren't just entertainment. They became a shared cultural shockwave, shaping how a generation remembers fear, loss, and the thrill of surviving the weirdest era in children's TV.